And good evening, baseball fans, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We had a lot of baseball this past week, a lot of very eventful baseball this past week, both at the pro level and at the college level and in the minors as well. And of course, joining me to discuss all that and more is my co-host who is still stuck in the tail end of hockey season, but he's almost through and almost free of that one, almost unfrozen, as you could call it. It is Freddie B. Good evening, sir. How are you doing?
I'm good, Mike. Good evening. Thank you for having me on again this week. Yeah, we're down. The Stanley Cup could potentially be awarded this week, so the hockey season has come to an end. It's been a fun ride, and a really good Stanley Cup up to this point.
Great Stanley Cup so far. I'd love to talk about it, but this is the Bullpen Bulletin.
We do that show later on. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah, you got that show coming on. Tomorrow night for next neutral zone, or
you know what? My daughter. We usually do it Wednesday nights. My daughter's graduating high school Wednesday, so I'm not going to be able to do it. Game 5 is Thursday, so we may push it back to Friday. So we may have a winner by then. Or we'll be talking, with the series headed back to Raleigh.
Yep, absolutely. Headed back to where I am currently. In fact, about 20 minutes that way.
Yeah.
Is where the Hurricanes play here in Raleigh. So
that's awesome.
I can't make it to a game because they're too good and the tickets are too expensive. Obviously for the Stanley Cup, but even during the regular season, when they're good, those ticket prices get real high. For those of you, of course, who are fans of the show, please follow us on X at IESR_DMV and at FreddieB_sports. And with that, of course, we kick off our show with our current score update. It is Monday night, so we have some teams playing live. Not a super heavy lineup tonight. We do actually have a couple of games who are final. We are getting underway a little bit later than usual here, so we do have a couple of finals. The Rays defeated the Red Sox 3-1 down there in Tampa. We also have the Mariners defeating the Orioles 6-3. That one just went final. Josh Naylor with a grand slam, proving to be the difference maker in that one.
Big.
Otherwise, across the league, we have the Yankees and Guardians facing off. That game tied at 5 in the bottom of the 8th. That is a good one. Stephen Kwan up to bat for the Guardians there. We'll see what they can do. And then we've got the Phillies beating the Blue Jays 5-2. That one is in the top of the 9th. Phillies will look to close that one out in the bottom of the 9th. And we have 4 West Coast games tonight. That's pretty about half the lineup, actually. We've got the Nationals and Giants getting underway in about 15 minutes. We've got the Astros and the Angels getting underway in about 10 minutes. Same with the Reds at the Padres. 2 teams desperately looking for a win in that one. And then we've got the Brewers against the Athletics. That one kicking off at 10:05 Eastern, 7:05 Pacific. So that's what's going on currently.
Busy night.
Busy night on the West Coast. East Coast, not so much. Only a handful of games on the East Coast. Really, I mean, if you want to get really literal with the definition of East Coast, really only the Orioles and Mariners on the East Coast. If you want to include Guardians and Toronto more towards the central area there. But we did have some big news with this past weekend. Of course, you got to start off with the Texas Longhorns softball team winning the 2026 Women's College World Series, defeating Texas Tech in 2 games, 2 pretty decent games
really
overall, with Texas winning 7-3 in game 1 and then 4-1 in game 2. Pitching was excellent for them. Offense doing more than enough to get your job done. And the Longhorns are your 2026 champions. It was a tournament that I would say probably going in, you could have made an argument for 5 or 6, maybe 7 different teams you think could get on a roll and win it. And at the end of the day, Texas was the one that came out on top. Freddie, what were your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think I have to play back last week's episode, but I think we both chose Texas to come away with this in the series, and it was good. I mean, once Oklahoma was knocked out early on in the super regionals, then this opened the door for anybody to win. And we had some really good games leading up to this College World Series final. And, the battle, former Big 12 conference rivals, the Red Raiders and the Longhorns. And it was a really good World Series. I mean, I couldn't believe how many home runs I saw hit.
Yeah.
I can't recall that many home runs before. They just, they were big, huge flies too. Like, congrats, to Texas on this. It was a fun tournament to watch.
Yeah, it was a really entertaining tournament. You had a lot of really fun games, a lot of really close games. You had some great comebacks. Remember, Texas had to do a double victory
Yeah.
in the group play in order to get to the final series, beating Tennessee in the process, which of course Tennessee was one of the teams that we highlighted pretty regularly during the season due to their elite pitching. But alas, that will close the book on the 2026 college softball season. I'm sure Oklahoma fans are thrilled everywhere to see the Longhorns to win it. Freddie, did you have any other takeaways from this season on the women's side?
No, not really, Mike. I mean, it was really entertaining, like you mentioned. The SEC put the most teams in it, just like they did here in on the men's side. Just it's a fantastic tournament, and like you mentioned before, it seems like the best teams, unlike college basketball sometimes where you might have a couple of Cinderellas, the best teams go ahead and win these big games. But we did see, with Mississippi State getting in, that was a really good story. The Davids beating the Goliaths, that was Oklahoma. It just was fantastic. There was Tennessee, who had the best pitching all season long. We followed them all season with that great story that they had. They just came up short as well. There were so many. I was more into college softball this season than I think I have been in any past year, Mike. It just flowed with everything else that's going on in sports in 2026.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's funny, kind of similar to you before last year. I can't say I really paid a ton of attention either, but really kind of honing in on it for the show. Really, it's really an interesting, really fascinating sport. One thing that is a little sad with the close of this season is the end of the collegiate career of Belmont pitcher Maya Johnson, who we talked about. Maybe I think we probably talked about a little bit more last year than this year, but Maya Johnson will go down in the books as probably one of the best collegiate softball pitchers of all time. Numbers that are absolutely ridiculous. This past year, 397 strikeouts in 215 innings on the season. Dummy numbers. Those are video game numbers. That's not even like that's not even fair. And she appeared in 34 games. Now keep in mind, folks, for those of you listening at home, the college softball season's only like 60 to 65-ish games long, and she pitched more than most MLB starting pitchers do in a 162 game season, both in games, innings pitched. But yeah, and so she was awarded with the Softball America Pitcher of the Year award with her .78 ERA, which is again just dummy numbers here, and was selected third overall by the Oklahoma City Spark in the AUSL draft. So she will get to go on to a professional career, which is great that they're starting up that league for the professional softball players. Probably a long time coming. So we'll see if she carries on her dominance into that. I imagine they might try to temper down the innings a little bit. Maybe not 215 innings over 34 games. Maybe they'll try to mellow that out a little bit.
But when you're that dominant, I mean, and the arms holding up, you can go back out there. I mean, why not?
last year when Belmont was in the the regionals, I don't think they made it all the way to the World Series. I think she pitched like 3 games in a row, back to back to back, like 3 days in a row, like just absurd. Of course, by the third day, she did start to actually give up some runs because the arm did start to tire out a bit, but yeah. But yeah, so congratulations once more to the Texas Longhorn softball team. They will get infinite bragging rights against Oklahoma and the rest of the SEC, of course, for another year until they are back at it in 2027.
Yep.
Flipping over to the men's side, we had the super regionals this past weekend, which are complete. There were a couple games series that lingered on into today, but everything is wrapped up, and we have our final 8. So starting it off with West Virginia versus Cal Poly. Cal Poly's wonderful Cinderella story coming to an end in rather abrupt fashion, as West Virginia won this one in 2 games. They won 12-2 and 17-1. Not really much resistance there. And West Virginia gets their spot in the final 8. What were your thoughts on this one, Freddie?
Oh, what I watched a little bit of this, and I thought Cal Poly might have a chance coming into this round, but man, the West Virginia bats just came alive. 29 runs in the 2 games. And, they were one of those teams playing long ball. Now, after watching them sweep through and dominate Cal Poly, this could be a team that could, give a lot of other teams trouble and go deep into this World Series bracket. I'm keeping my eye on West Virginia. That if I had to take somebody, there's really not Georgia or North Carolina, maybe the 2 top favorites seeded wise, but West Virginia, the Mountaineers, I think they have what it takes to get all the way. The great pitching and the bats came alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially when you look at the group that they landed in, I think there's definitely potential for them to do some damage. We're going to get to that in a few minutes. Moving down, we had the matchup between Cinderella. So by default, we were going to get another Cinderella coming in here, but we had Troy versus Little Rock, and Troy made pretty quick, clean work of Little Rock here, beating them 12-2 and then 7-2. Fun fact about Troy: they lost the very first game of their regional in the Gainesville regional. Since then, 6 games in a row. Definitely one of the hotter teams entering the final 8.
Yeah, definitely one of the hotter teams getting in. And did you see any of highlights of the Troy series at all? They hosted this super regional, and they had like 6,400 fans in attendance to witness this. They came out, and that was incredible to see. How they rallied around. And Troy, another one of those teams you can't count anybody out that's advanced this far up to this point.
Right. No, absolutely. Everybody, you're either just a really talented team, or you've gone on a very good hot streak to get to this point. If you're in the final 8, and both types of teams, by the way, very dangerous when you get into this stage of the game. Next up, we move to Chapel Hill in what actually ended up being the only series that went 3 games. UNC versus USC, and USC actually took game 1 9-5 this past Friday before UNC came back and won 4-0, and then won the rubber match 4-3. I believe it was in walk-off fashion. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong on that one. Yep.
It was.
Bottom of the 9th, walk-off fashion. That's right. I remember seeing the highlight with that deep drive. Oh, and the missed foul ball. Very important right before the long line drive. Yeah.
Man, I was pulling for SC in this one. Just being, the only California team still remaining. This was a really good series. It was, like you mentioned, the only game, the only series that went the full 3 games. And SC hit the big homer game 1, and then they end up getting walked off. They had a 3-run lead going into the 8th inning the other day, and Carolina, came back and pulled that one out. No, I'm sorry, they're up 3-1, and Carolina with running the 8th and then 2 in the 9th. Dangerous team that we expected this of North Carolina, but SC, they gave them one heck of a fight, and like I said, probably the best series going in. I thought it was going to be one of the tougher ones to predict, and the Tar Heels come out on top.
Yeah, really tough series, really good series, kind of like we were expecting / hoping.
Yeah.
And yeah, they absolutely.
Owen Hull, the center fielder for North Carolina, went off in that third game. He went 4 for 5, and the big 2 RBIs there. Fun kid to watch. These guys can just hit the ball around. He hit almost 400 this year. Carolina's offense, and they've got the pitching that coincides. They can make a run.
Absolutely, for sure. And then moving on to the last team on the left side of the bracket, we had Auburn and Ole Miss. Auburn, the number 4 seed, coming in, but Ole Miss pulling off the upset in 2 games, winning 6-4 and then 5-3. Fun fact about Ole Miss: despite not hosting their regional and not hosting the super regional, 0 losses so far in the tournament. What are your thoughts here on this series in Ole Miss?
I mean, Auburn went to the very last moment to even get into the super regional. They had to come back and beat, I think it was Milwaukee in the regionals. They didn't look great in that, and then they sure as heck, I mean, they didn't look like the Auburn team that was deserving of the number 4 seed overall, and number 4 team in the country coming in. And Southern Miss, give them credit. They battled, and you just have to win the games at hand. It doesn't matter who you're playing against. You just have to go out there and win. And you remember not Southern Miss, but Ole Miss is a team not far removed from winning the College World Series. So they have that,
right.
Charismatic, with them, the charisma with them to carry in another. I mean, and they get North Carolina in the first game. Is that correct?
Let's take a look.
Is that how it's gonna? That's gonna play out? Yeah, they get North Carolina, and then West Virginia plays Troy on that left side of the bracket in the first round matchups. I don't know who's gonna win either of those games.
Yeah, absolutely. So you alluded to it. So with those 4 winning, that leaves us with one of the groups here being Troy, West Virginia, Ole Miss, and UNC. Kind of a ragtag group thrown together there, but that should be a very entertaining, some very entertaining games, and a very entertaining part of the final 8 will be those 4 teams.
Yeah.
Moving on to the right side of the bracket, a little bit more traditional going on here. We had Georgia facing Mississippi State, and while they were good games, very close games between the two, 13-12 and then 11-9, Georgia did pull this one off. They remain the highest seed left, and another team that has not lost so far. And doing so, well, at least through the regional in dominant fashion. The super regional, not as dominant, but Mississippi State was also a very good team as well. So it was a good 2 games at least there.
Yeah, Georgia. The 13-12 game, that game was crazy, and the amount of home runs in that 13-12 game that Georgia came back and won. They were down 6-0 in the second inning, and down 7-0 at one point in this game before mounting that big comeback. Georgia has the offense. Aoki pitched a really good game in the second game of that series, and I like Georgia going forward. That the big teams coming in, I think, were the 2 Georgia teams. Georgia Tech obviously eliminated, and UCLA obviously eliminated. Georgia still, I think, might be the best team out there.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And by the way, the teams that eliminated UCLA and Georgia Tech are both still in it. West Virginia being one, and the other one being Oklahoma. I'm going to jump
Mhm.
around a little bit to the Lawrence Regional, where Oklahoma faced off against Kansas, and in decisive fashion, 8-1 and then 13-2, took care of them. Oklahoma does have a loss. They're one of the teams that they did lose one of the
Mhm.
regional games against Georgia Tech, but since then, pretty dominant in this series against Kansas.
Yeah, this was Kansas's first trip to the super regional, and hosting it. Um, but yeah, Oklahoma was just too much for the Jayhawks in this one. A 13-2 beat down, and I don't know what to think of the Oklahoma team. Very good coming in. Their expectations weren't as high as some of these others. So when you weren't expected to be here, those are the teams that I think are the most dangerous when you are in the World Series, because they were never there to begin with, supposed to be there to begin with. And I think that they have nothing to lose at this point. They're just going to go out there and play Sooner baseball.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think in both cases, both in the regional and the super regional, probably not favored, and yet they've come out of both, and they're probably not going to be a heavily favored team in their group in the final eight, which we will get to that in a second. We also had in Tuscaloosa, we had 7 seed Alabama facing off against another one of these Cinderella teams in St. John's. And St. John's Cinderella run abruptly comes to an end as Alabama wins 8-0 and then 7-2. What are your thoughts on this Alabama team?
Alabama's tough. I mean, St. John's, they made it out of the Tallahassee regional, right? I'm sorry that
Yep.
opened up a wound there for you, Mike. But probably
Right
the
here.
weak one
Right
of
here.
the,
Right here.
I know, I'm
Right
sorry.
there.
Probably one of the weakest teams coming in, and Alabama did what they were supposed to do, and you know, pitched really well. 10 strikeouts in one of the games. Zane Adams went 6 innings in one of the games with 8 Ks. He was great. Jason Torres, phenomenal third baseman there as well. He had a big series. Alabama is tough, and they're going to have a tough going with who they play in this next game.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then the final super regional we had in Austin, we had Texas and Oregon. Texas handles Oregon in 2 games, wins the first game handily 11-3. Oregon does make a little bit of a push in game 2 there, but ultimately the Longhorns, of course, their women's team just winning the softball World Series, so they couldn't be outdone, overshine by the women's side. So they beat Oregon and then moved on there. So that leaves us in the bottom group with an all SEC lineup of Oklahoma, Alabama, Texas, and Georgia, with Alabama facing Oklahoma and Texas facing Georgia in game 1. By the way, the first 2 games of the first bracket will be kicking off on Friday here, June 12th, and then the second games, or the games of bracket 2, will be kicking off on June 13th on the Saturday. And this is basically going to run pretty much continuously through June 22nd, if necessary, would be the final game of the World Series there. So what are your thoughts on this? I guess between the two of them, you could call this the group of death to make a World Cup reference. By the way, World Cup's kicking off this week
Yes,
here
sir.
in the United States with the USA playing, so that'll be fun. But in any case, what are your thoughts on this group here?
Man, the group on the right side is loaded, like you said, all 4 SEC teams. Now, my question is, after the first set of the games, are they intermingling the 2 sides of the bracket like we saw in the women's side, or is this going to be traditional left and right?
Man, we won't really know
Until it
until
gets there, yeah.
16th,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Okay.
That's when the elimination brackets. So that's when the winners of the elimination brackets and then the losers of the winners brackets will match up. So the June 16th is going to be the day where we would determine if they do that same little switcheroo that they did in softball. So that could, a team in this really tough SEC only bracket could get the opportunity if they were to get flipped up into the top bracket, which one would argue between the two is probably the less dominant of the two, and opportunity to sneak into the World Series, kind of like I believe what happened with Texas Tech got switched on the women's side, and they took that opportunity and turned it into making it to the World Series.
Yeah, I don't know what to think. Obviously, Georgia heavily favored, I think, right now. Them and UNC are the two teams you expect on paper to be the two that come out of this. But the way, Oklahoma's playing pretty decent baseball right now, I still like Georgia, and I like West Virginia right now. That's going to be kind of like the dark horse, even though they were 16th ranked in the country, not a dark horse, so to speak, but not one of the top 3 or 4 teams in this remaining World Series bracket. So I'm going to go with West Virginia and Georgia as the two teams I think are going to play for the national championship.
That is a great pick, and that would be an amazing national championship. If I had to pick, man, it is a tough one. Absolutely. I mean, all of these teams down here in the winners bracket 2 have so much momentum. I'm gonna go with UNC in honor of my coworker who graduated from UNC. Also given by the fact that they're 45 minutes up the road. So I'm going to go with UNC coming out of that top bracket. Although, like I said, it would not surprise me if one of these teams, if maybe, an Alabama or a Texas, if they got flipped up into that top bracket after the elimination bracket, if they snuck up there and managed to steal through that top bracket. But I'll go with UNC from the top, and I'll go with, they're playing such good baseball right now, and they've been on a roll this entire time. I'm going to go with Texas. I think Texas is a team that, several of these teams have momentum. I think they've been beating their opponents the most dominant fashion. So I'm going to go with, actually, no, that's boring because the women's team just won.
Hey, that's cool. I
was debating between Texas and Alabama. So I'll go with Alabama to change it up. UNC versus Alabama in the final series.
Okay, I like that. But you know what? It's going to be a lot of fun to see Troy if they can make a deep run. And
that would be,
that would be really good.
You look at that West Virginia, kind of like you mentioned, West Virginia. You look at that West Virginia Troy first game, and you got to wonder, does the winner of that game get enough of that momentum? Because then think of it, all they have to do is beat the winner of UNC and Ole Miss, which Ole Miss, like you said, they just beat up on an inconsistent Auburn team. So what are they really? As they get into this. Plus, they got Nebraska, which you could argue maybe one of the weaker regional host teams. So have they really faced that challenge in this tournament? And then UNC, they did just show vulnerability, losing a game to USC and needing a dramatic comeback in order to make the regional. So, it could, if the winner of that Troy-West Virginia game could very easily win that second game there, and all of a sudden, they're one victory away from the whole thing. It's crazy to think about.
And for a team like West Virginia or Troy or even North Carolina, you got two ACC teams and what is Troy in their Conference USA or Sun Belt or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you can oust the SEC teams, I mean, they're so dominant. Putting 5 of the 8 in. They're really kind of claiming the stake for being the hotbed for college baseball, especially over the last few years, as we've seen with like Vanderbilt, what they've done in Florida and, Mississippi and Auburn. South Carolina had really good teams in the day too. So the SEC has been very good for a long time. And it would be great if a team outside of the SEC wins this college tournament.
That would be nice. It would be cool to see a West Virginia or a UNC. I mean, obviously it would be amazing to see Troy win the whole thing. But, for Troy to make it through and then beat an SEC team 2 out of 3, that might be an awfully tall task for Troy to take care of there.
The state of North Carolina, too. I mean, they put a lot of teams into this tournament as of recent years. Clemson was really good for a very long time, and then Coastal, and now you've got UNC here as well.
ECU also making the tournament.
A lot of good teams out of North Carolina.
Yep, absolutely. Southeast is where it's at. It's funny. I was talking to my cousin. This was a couple weeks ago, and he's actually a high school baseball coach up in Pennsylvania.
Very nice.
And I asked him because he said his team was in the playoffs. I was like, oh, where are your kids going? Do you got anybody? Anybody who's maybe like around 19, some of those late round, high school draft picks. And he's like, oh, no, you got to be in the South for that.
Really?
He's like, no chance. He said, I got a couple kids going to play college ball, but that's about it.
Yeah.
So that will do it. And of course, a lot of great college baseball still to come as those 8 teams are eventually narrowed down to 1. Unfortunately, by the time we go live again, we'll have only eliminated like 2 teams. So, we'll still be in the thick of it. But come June 22nd, with 2 weeks from now, we will either likely know or maybe be right in the middle of finding out who our college baseball champion is. Which will then give us about 3 weeks to talk about the draft leading up, because these kids turn around and they get drafted a month later.
No downtime here at IE Sports Radio.
No. They get drafted, and by August, some of these guys are in low A ball, right, or rookie ball.
We've seen it before.
So it is quite a turnaround for these kids. Of course, noting that we're talking 8 teams of like 200 something baseball teams across the country. So there's 100 some other teams worth of guys who are like, okay, we're already in the draft process. But
wasn't Christian Moore recently one of the guys who had gotten drafted, and then he was playing, I think, all the way either AA or made it to AAA with Salt Lake and the Angels.
I don't know that one, but I do know this happened. I want to say it was maybe 2 years ago. Nolan Chanel of the Los Angeles Angels got drafted in the first round, and then 1 month later was making his pro debut.
Yeah.
Which is, I think it was one of the fastest times ever. It was the fastest since, and I happen to know this one personally, Ryan Zimmerman came out of Virginia Tech, got drafted by the Nationals back in 2005. And he made his pro debut with something absurd, like 10 days later.
Wow.
After he was drafted.
That's
it was
crazy.
an insane turnaround. You never see something like that. But so that will do it for the first part of our show. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to do our weekend review, with which Freddie has provided us with a fun little graphic here that hopefully we'll get to show y'all. But do not go away. You are listening to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop, including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We are back for the second half of our show. This is going to be a really quick score update because only a couple things have changed since we last did our score update. The Phillies-Blue Jays game does go final 5-2. Is that one? Christopher Sanchez strikes out 10 in 7 innings, but does give up two runs. Which they should just cut him now at that point, after that. No, but does give up 2 runs, which,
June hasn't been very kind to Christopher Sanchez. Now that's 3 runs in his first 2 starts here in June.
Yeah, after 0 in the month of May. I mean, at this rate, what is he going to give up 6 runs in the month of July? I mean, that's just preposterous.
The guy is still dealing. Heavy favorite right now for NL Cy Young.
Well, maybe not, because the reason I bring up the ERA is because with the 2 runs, that does put Jacob Misiorowski in the lead now in ERA, as he now has a 1.5 flat ERA, and Sanchez is up to 1.54. So this is shaping up to be a very, very interesting National League Cy Young race if both these guys can continue this trend. Otherwise, the Yankees and Guardians have gone into extra innings. That one's still tied at 5. Nationals-Giants have kicked off. That game is 0-0 in the top of the second. Astros-Angels has kicked off. The Angels actually have a 1-0 lead now in the bottom of the second. And the Reds at the Padres, that one also 0-0. That one in the bottom of the second. Brewers-Athletics set to have their first pitch any moment now. So now we're going to kick it into the week in review. We're going to look back at this past week and some of the different things that went on, some of the teams that are hot, some of the teams that are not. Freddie, go ahead and take it away.
Well, first of all, I want to start off with just a couple of fantastic performances that we saw out of a couple of guys yesterday. In one day, 2 different games, we've got 2 different players from different teams going 5 for 5 for their respective teams. Carson Bench for the Mets yesterday against the Padres, 5 for 5, 10 total bases, 5 RBI. And then you flip it over, Angels and Dodgers at the same time. Backup catcher Sebastian Rivero goes 5 for 5 as well. He drives in 6 runs in a career game for him. So those are a couple of cool things you don't see very rare. I mean, it is very rare that you see that in the game now, where somebody can go, and get 5 hits in a game, especially somebody like Rivero, who is hitting 9th in the lineup. To get 5 ABs is one thing in a game. Hitting that low in the lineup. The Angels went on and beat the Dodgers 13-5 in that game, so they did have a lot of run support. But yeah, it's been a good week. Like you said, Christopher Sanchez, he lost his scoreless streak ended. Did not lose, I'm sorry, but his scoreless streak ended in a game against the Padres last week at just over 50 innings. I put out a text. I said, you know what? He's going to go for, 5 straight games or whatever it was of 7 innings and no earned runs. And literally the next batter up, I think it was Jackson Merrill drove a home run or something like that. So that streak, 50 innings is pretty darn spectacular. Oral Hershiser with his 59 scoreless innings is the MLB record, but so that we haven't seen anything like that in quite a while in baseball. So that was fantastic to see. Then you got big news of like Aaron Judge going out, with fractured rib. How's that gonna carry over to the Yankees? How do you recover from a fractured rib? I know I've cracked one once before, and there's nothing you can do other than rest, because any kind of movement, it is so painful. It's difficult to breathe. The pain is there. So the Yankees have some questions right now as well. Tarek Skubal.
Yep.
What's going to happen with him? He just made a rehab start, went 5 innings yesterday. It would be good to see him back healthy. And then you think about what are the Tigers going to do when he returns? Are they going to trade him?
Right.
A lot of questions to be answered, but the same teams, continue to dominate across Major League Baseball, Mike. Tampa Bay and the Yankees still atop in the NL East. I'm sorry, in the AL East. Toronto, they lost today against the Phillies, and, they're trying to get to that 500 mark. Your Orioles still, right there as well. Cleveland still out in front in the Central, and then the Mariners, only a 2-game lead. Texas is starting to put some wins together now. They're 2 behind the Mariners, and then you go down to the National League. The Braves, they haven't been, I don't think, any less than 9-game lead pretty much all season long.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. The Brewers are playing really good. Jacob Mizorowski, another huge performance, 10 strikeouts against the Rockies the other day. And the Dodgers, a couple more weeks, and they'll have clinched the NL West at this point. 7.5-game lead over the Diamondbacks, and the Padres, who can't find their way out of a paper bag right now, did pick up 1 win in the Mets series, but had a brutal road trip against the Nationals and Phillies. Only 2 wins in their last 11 games.
Yeah, no, Padres really struggling. They're one of the teams that stood out to me, even falling behind Arizona, which Arizona is not exactly lighting the world on fire over there in the desert. They're playing good baseball, but the Padres are just collapsing really quickly. Those top 3 teams in the National League, my goodness, you look at it, Atlanta, Milwaukee, and the Dodgers. I mean, that's going to be very difficult, even for these wild card teams, whoever they may be, to break through that lineup. But yeah, the Phillies, we kind of talked about them last week. They felt like they had kind of stalled out a little bit.
Yeah.
But they figured some things out this past week. They are now handily in the second spot there in the East, and looks like second wild card spot behind the Cardinals, another team that looks like they figured some stuff out as well. And you mentioned that the Mariners running away with it also. A couple of teams that are a little disappointed right now. The Reds, who are a team that were definitely threatening, definitely in that mix. They are now the first National League Central team in some time to fall below 500.
Right.
So that's definitely a black mark for them. We mentioned the Padres. I got to say, I haven't been wholly impressed with the Blue Jays or the Orioles. We kind of talked about them last week, two teams trying to fight their way back in this division. Neither one really seems to be getting enough momentum to get that close. The Orioles kind of had it, and then the Blue Jays took it away this past weekend, but then the Blue Jays just lost tonight, like you mentioned. So
and the Orioles just lost Chris Bassett. He just goes on the 15-day IL as well. So as soon as he's starting to pitch,
may or may not be addition by subtraction. Maybe we'll see.
This isn't the same Chris Bassett of yesteryear. No, he's having his struggles right now, and he take all the time right you need to recover, because he may have been pitching in discomfort for quite some time, and the Orioles got to get him back in check.
Yeah, the only problem was the timing, because ideally Dean Kramer, who has been the team's number 5 starter for like 4 years in a row, he's been the most like consistently placing in that 5 spot of like any pitcher I think I've seen in the league, is not quite back from his injury yet. So ideally, I think they were trying to wait and see, because they waited a few days before putting him on the IL. I think they were waiting to see if maybe somebody like Kramer could get back, but not quite. But yeah, another team that's, the Athletics, I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. They seem to have a chance to really get some momentum in the West, and they just kind of collapsed and couldn't do anything with it.
Yeah, I can't really gauge the A's, but what I could say is they got a really good performance out of Gage Jump over the last 2 starts for him. 13 and a third innings pitched, 0.68 ERA. Only 6 hits, 4 walks, and 8 strikeouts over that time as well. Putting him in like the number 8 player in this week's top 12 that I put together. I don't know if are you able to put that on the screen there, Mike?
Well, let's take a look and see. There we go. All right. So yes. So there's a Gage Jump that you mentioned. By the way, Gage Jump might be a name familiar to fans of the show, as we were just talking about him last year with Arkansas, helping Arkansas get to the College World Series, making it his way quickly up into the majors for the Athletics.
Yeah, he's doing really well. The A's have some arms. We've seen, JT Ginn as well, have a couple really good pitching performances. So the A's have the young arms. There's no consistency with them. They need to go on a run or two, and if they could find themselves going on a 7 or 8 game winning streak, they can be right back atop in the American League West.
Yep, absolutely. And you can see a couple of key guys who had struggled so far this year making their way onto your list. Logan Webb, I think, being one of them, got off to a rough start and then got injured, coming back and having that start he did this past week. Matt Chapman, I know, has had his struggles in San Francisco, seeing him pick it up. And then Pete Crow Armstrong, who is starting to get some ire from Cubs fans for his performance, offensive and surprisingly defensively, with some miscues. He certainly found his bat this past week.
Oh, yeah, in walk-off fashion, too. I mean, hitting big bombs, 4 homers, 440 average over the last week. So he's stepped up his game, in lieu of all the mistakes he had defensively, and on and off the field, altercations with fans as well. So, like we said, we just talked about him on last week's show. He's an integral piece for the Chicago Cubs. And now when he's good, he's really good. And he's, MVP, in the talk for an MVP type of candidate, if he can do what he's capable of. And we're seeing that. Brendan Marsh, I talked about him earlier in the year. He's had a really good, season, all season long so far. 3 more homers. And to go along with the Phillies, Johan Duran, 3 saves, 7 strikeouts over the week. And Jacob deGrom, he's found his game again. And the Rangers, in order for them to make a push and catch Seattle, they need Jacob deGrom to be the ace that he's never going to be the guy that he used to be, but the Rangers do need him to step up and be the ace of the rotation.
Yes, absolutely. As their young guys have not quite done so, they're going to need DeGrom to still be that guy. That is a phenomenal graphic, Freddie. We're going to have to make sure that we bring that one back for future shows, because that is excellent to see. Get a nice little quick glance summary for the viewers there.
Thank you.
Yeah. So now moving on here, we're going to our upcoming matchups to watch. Of course, some series kicking off today, Monday, with the games we're talking about, but we'll have more series coming throughout the week and then into the weekend. So, Freddie, what are some of the matchups that you are looking forward to here?
This week, one of the ones I'm looking forward to, honestly, is going to be the Braves and the Mets. Those two rivals always put on, good games. The Phillies and Brewers, another one. I'm sticking with the NL. I think the NL is the better of the two leagues right now. And I want to see how the Phillies can do. Their powerful lineup going against the big arms of the Brewers. That's a fantastic matchup. So I'm really keen in on those two. There are a couple of others that kind of interest me, but those are the two matchups that I'm going to really focus on for the weekend.
Yeah, and the Phillies do get Mizorowski there on Friday, so that's going to be.
I want to see how he does against
Harrison, who is also having a phenomenal season for the Brewers as a starter. They get him on Sunday, so that will be a really good matchup against Christopher Sanchez. Might be your pitching matchup of the week there. Yeah, it looks like you stole the good ones.
Oh, I'm sorry.
From me there. No, it's fine. I mean, look, there's really aren't a ton of really great ones.
Your Orioles are in San Diego. I might have to drive down there this weekend and go check them out.
Looks like they're actually.
Oh no, we're on the road. I'm sorry. Yeah, we're in Baltimore. So
yeah. Although
I'm not gonna check it out.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely go check it out. Let's see, what do we got going on during the week here? Dodgers against the Pirates. The Pirates have been one of those scrappy teams so far. They're hanging in there, and the Pirates do get Skeens in game one of that matchup. Okay. So that could be a good series to watch. We got the Yankees and Guardians are going to continue their series. I think that's going to be a really fun series. By the way, Yankees have a 7-5 lead now into the bottom of the 10th there.
Okay.
And just taking a quick skim down the list. Those appear to be kind of the key matchups. And like we mentioned, Cincinnati and San Diego, two teams trying to get back on track. We'll see if one of them can get some momentum going to try to make that happen. Now we're going to quick jump down on the farm where we take a look at what's going on in the minor leagues this week. And I'm going to kick it off. I mean, obviously, you mentioned Skubal making his rehab debut, 5 scoreless innings, only threw like 60 pitches too. So very efficient performance for him. That's a good sign, definitely better than it could have been. Another guy worth highlighting here is Hagen Smith of the White Sox.
Yep.
As if things weren't going great enough for the White Sox already this year. Now they have one of their touted prospects who they just drafted in last year's draft, 5th overall, showing success in AAA. With only 3 hits, 3 walks, and scoreless 4 2/3 for the White Sox.
I like that kid. He's a lanky left-handed guy that's got an awkward delivery to the plate. He has like the leg kick finish of like Tim Hill that we had seen with the Padres and Yankees, but he throws it almost like a 3/4 sidearm ish. Jamie Moyer-esque
slot.
Yeah. So he's got a lot of movement on his ball, really deceptive. So, if you can get a young left-handed pitcher, that's going to be beneficial to the White Sox, who, are starting to turn things around, only a couple of games behind the Guardians at this point in the season.
Yep. And then 72 strikeouts through 47 2/3 innings this so far this year, which is a pretty healthy number of innings to rack up. This is his first full season in professional ball, of course, being drafted last year. The only downside, though, is that he does have 33 walks on the year, which is an awfully high walk rate. That's nearly 6, I believe, nearly 6 walks per 9. So that's something that he'll have to work on, something he'll have to cut down. But overall, a lot of encouraging signs there for the White Sox pitching prospect there. Who are you highlighting this week, Freddie?
Since I'm focusing a lot on the California League with our Dirt and Diamonds show that we have been doing, I'm focusing on Easton Shelton of the Ontario Tower Buzzers, the single A affiliate of the Dodgers. And he is having a fantastic start to this season here right now. He leads the California League with 17 home runs, 50 RBIs, and hitting 272. Big, 6'4", 225-pound first baseman. Looks like he has the makings of, he's got the body type and he can hit with the power that as we've seen so far this season here in the California League. I can't wait to see what this kid can do going forward and just the potential that he has. There's a lot of other guys in this league as well. We've seen a couple of guys get called up already from single A into high A and a couple into double A as well. The Dodgers just have such a deep farm system, and they just plug guys in. We're seeing already this year, guys making huge impacts on the big team that can't, and then the guys down in triple A, are just itching to get into the lineup and become a Dodger because they have what it takes. They're doing a fantastic job with everything that they're doing there right now. But yeah, I don't know what you can say bad about what the Dodgers are doing. Tommy Edman made a rehab start. He should be back in the Dodgers lineup. So we'll see what happens going forward. But yeah, we'll talk more on Dirt and Diamonds here on IE Sports Radio. That's Larry B and I's show in which we break down California League action. So we get really into it on the guys here on the West Coast at single A. So I'll have a little bit more on that later in the week as we do that show.
That sounds awesome. And yeah, it's real easy for the Dodgers to build up a good farm team when they just pay everybody in free agency. You don't have to make any trades. You don't have to trade any prospects.
Yeah, I know.
So,
but
I wonder if they don't make that big move, with some of these guys. Because let's face it, they've got Kyle Tucker signed for forever. They're not going to need a ton of out. I think they've got like 3 or 4 top outfield prospects.
Like like Tibbs, where does when does James Tibbs come into play?
Right. How does he get his spot?
Who is he going to replace? Because you got Andy Pages, who just always seems to do enough to stay in the lineup and contribute. There is no weaknesses in the Dodgers team, and there's no holes. So it's going to take like an injury or something like that for somebody to get called up at this point. But yeah, their OKC AAA team has got a lot of star talent on it right now.
Absolutely. So now we've made it to the end of our show, which means it's time for our Around the Diamond segment where we talk about whatever we really feel like here in the final minute. So Freddie, I will let you kick it off. What is your Around the Diamond topic for the week?
I'm looking again forward. I'm looking towards this College World Series. It has been so entertaining. The college baseball season has been great so far. The regionals were fantastic. The super regionals kind of lacked a little bit, but I'm really looking forward to these teams. I'm going to focus on, those smaller teams like Troy. How can they do? How can West Virginia do? As far as the big boys go in Major League Baseball, we're getting down, closer to July 1st, trades talks coming along, big series like you mentioned with the Reds and Padres, both teams needing to get on track. Padres just scored and opened the scoring in this game on a Freddie Fermin home run, and Freddie Fermin hit a home run the other night in the 8th inning, which gave the Padres the lead in their own solo win over the last few games.
Awesome. Yes, Freddie for me, not to be confused with Freddie Freeman. You
Yeah,
gotta,
right.
for mean. You
I
gotta
mean,
gotta get your Freddies right. So for my around the diamond topic, I stumbled upon a stat, and this is completely by accident, and I actually discovered it during the show here as we were talking, because we were coming up on our weekend review, and I was looking at some stats, trying to see who was doing well, and I noticed that very sneakily. Jose Ramirez of the Guardians, who we had talked about earlier in the season as having struggled, he's picked it up a little bit since then, kind of almost back to his normal self. But Jose Ramirez has very quietly gotten tied for the league lead in stolen bases so far with 23.
Whoa. Stolen?
Yeah.
Let me see here.
Yeah, very, 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 very quietly tied himself with Nasim Nunez, who is another kind of random one for the Nationals. And then Bobby Witt Jr. Is the other guy who's tied there. So we got 3 of them at 23. But that led me to look at his stats, and I discovered that earlier in this season, Jose Ramirez passed the 300 stolen base mark for his career. He also currently sits at 295 home runs for his career, which means he is just 5 home runs away from becoming the 9th player in MLB history to join the 300 club, as in 300 home runs and 300 stolen bases. Some of the names that you might, you would expect to be on this list are there. Barry Bonds, Willie Mays, Alex Rodriguez, Bobby Bonds, Barry Bonds' dad, is also on here. Andre Dawson, Steve Finley, Alex Rodriguez, Carlos Beltran, and Reggie Saunders. Now, what makes this more interesting, Jose Ramirez is only 33. So he's still got some time. And it's not illogical to think that he might just become the 2nd player ever to join the 400 club, only needing 90 stolen bases and 105 home runs, which if you take his career averages kind of for both, I mean, the stolen bases, he's on pace, he'll get the stolen bases in a few years, maybe 3 or 4. For the home runs, might take a little bit more effort, depends on how he kind of finishes the year. But that would be crazy to think that Jose Ramirez could join Barry Bonds as one of the only 2 players to make it to the 400 club.
That's a crazy stat. I did not think of Jose Ramirez as being that great of a stolen base guy. I know he's always hit, for average. He can hit for power. He's had a couple of seasons with 30-plus home runs, and 24. I think he had 39. He almost hit 40. I think he's definitely going to get to that 400. I mean, all he has to do is average 20 a season over the next 5 years, and he'll get to that point.
Yep.
And then all he really needs is another 20 to 25 stolen bases every year. He's already at that point, and we're in the first week of June. He's got 23. That's incredible. Fantastic stat there, Mike. How did you think of that?
It was kind of one of those things you let the brain kind of start spitballing, because you see it, you hear people talk about 300 home runs and 300 doubles, or 500 home runs, 3,000 hits, people combining stats, and I was like, geez, I wonder who has 300 home runs and 300 stolen bases. And to be honest, I thought it was going to be a much more extensive list. I thought it was going to be one of those things I was going to look and they'd be like, 20 something guys. No, only 8. And only, 1 with the distinction of going further. Now, another funny stat, as I look at Baseball Reference going down this list, the all-time leader, can you name, and this is, I think this is really cheesy, and I feel like this guy should be separated out for a very specific reason, but the all-time leader in combined home runs and stolen bases. And the hint, it is not Barry Bonds.
Oh, gosh. All time?
Yep. So you add the home runs.
Ricky Henderson.
That is correct, because Ricky Henderson has so many stolen bases
How many homers did Ricky hit?
Ricky hit 297 home
See,
runs.
he did. See, I was wondering why he didn't make that list of being, one of the top 9.
He was just a few home runs shy. But his 1,400 stolen bases by itself, even if he hit 0 home runs, would have put him number 1 all time on that list.
Okay, great question. All right, I'm glad I got that one right. I actually pulled up stats for Jose Canseco because I thought maybe he might be close to that list, but he only had 200. He only had 200 stolen bases in his career. Started off stealing bases, and then he, ended up getting some knee injuries. So I was just wondering where he was in that. He wasn't even close.
And I'm just now noticing that there's another evolution, and I'm really having fun with this 300 Club page on Baseball Reference. There's a subcategory of this, which again, Jose Ramirez could make his way onto this list as well. 6 players all time have had 300 home runs, 300 stolen bases, and 2,000 hits. And Ramirez, so it's obviously a subset of the original group. So it's Bonds, Mays, Dawson, Finley, Rodriguez, and Beltran. And Ramirez only needs 273 hits to get to 2,000. So he could have that potentially by the end of next year, depending on how the rest of this year and next year stay out. So another small subgroup that Ramirez could become a part of. Now, I don't think he'll get to the 3,000 hits club, which only features Mays and Rodriguez, as Barry Bonds ended up just shy of 3,000 hits for his career, probably because he walked so many dang times towards the end of his career there.
Oh, yeah. Well, great stuff there, Mike. That was awesome.
Yeah, sometimes you just go down the rabbit hole in baseball stats. Me and my dad do it all the time. We start talking about one stat, and next thing we know, we're looking up 1930s leaders for the decade in home runs for the National League.
That's a typical conversation. How it is with my dad as well, or my brother. I mean, we talk about old stats, old players. Remember this, and then we just can go down some deep, dark rabbit holes of some useless sports knowledge.
Yep. That's exactly what it is. It's useless sports knowledge, and useless sports knowledge, by the way, is the best knowledge. Nobody's been able to prove me otherwise.
Right.
Anything. Well, that will do it for tonight's show. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Once again, reminder for those of you who are a fan of the show, please follow us on X at IESR_DMV and Freddie at FreddieB_sports. Freddie, any parting thoughts?
No parting thoughts tonight, Mike. It's just another great week. It's been great catching up. Like I said, college baseball, the World Series starts this week. Big games to be played here. And what are we going to see on the MLB side? Who's going to step it up this week? Who's going to crack and be that big dominant player and make that new graphic that I just put out the next week?
Yeah, who's going to make the top performers of the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio? Who's going to end up on that list next week? Something to watch for. Well, once again, thank you all for tuning in. This has been Mike, Pat, and Freddie B for the Bullpen Bulletin here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.